this lingering thing in the industry where mental health is something that we seem to care about, but for some reason we don't talk about it enough. What works for me is step back a little bit and go, it's okay to not know. It's okay to, I have no idea what I'm doing, and that's okay. Because no one, hopefully no one is expecting me to know everything. And I'll get there. And understanding that there are steps that you need to take and that you will take and that you will at some point be successful if you have the purpose in front of you. It's a very, very important thing to keep in mind constantly. Because again, that pressure of trying to control something and not being able to and still trying comes from that messy place in the middle, I think. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel defeated. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. And this, I'll go back to, this is just a job. That is just a conversation. That was just an email. That was just a phone call. People still love you. People still want you here. The world would be devastated if you were not here.
Welcome to the Tech Waka Podcast, where we dive into the journeys of New Zealand's top tech leaders. Your host for today is Jakub, bringing you conversations with tech leaders and innovators from across Aotearoa. Join us as we uncover the experiences, challenges, and successes that shape our tech community.
Welcome to the Tech Waka Podcast. I'm your host, Jakub, and today we are diving into a topic we often overlook in our industry, mental health. My guest is Diego Nievas, Chief Technology Officer at Atturra. Diego has been very vocal about the emotional and psychological toll our fast-paced tech culture can take, and why we need to talk about it more. From the concept of psychological sustainability to navigating burnout and seeking help, this conversation is deeply personal, profoundly honest, and incredibly timely. This episode of the Tech Waka Podcast is proudly brought to you by Wires Uncrossed, lifting the standard of software delivery across New Zealand, Australia, and beyond. A big thanks to Wires Uncrossed for supporting the Tech Waka mission and backing the voices of our tech leadership community. To learn more, go to wiresuncrossed.co.nz. Hey Diego, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I am good. Well, great to have you. We met a few months ago, and over coffee, I remember that we connected on a few topics, but I think one of the topics we discussed was mental health in IT or technology leaders, professionals, and resilience. And I also noticed that you're not afraid to be vocal on these topics on LinkedIn as well. And I think that could be a great topic for us to explore today. Why do you think it's so important to talk about mental well-being in technology?
Thank you for opening subjects like this, because this will answer the question a little bit. Because I think that we don't talk about it enough. I think that we're used to building systems that are resilient. We talk a lot about, I'm going to use a bit of a couple of technical terms. We talk a lot about SREs and reliability, and we make sure that data is protected. We make sure that connections are protected and that our APIs are safe and blah. What I also think is that we have a view of how to keep people safe when it comes to the psychological safety angle. But I am quite sure as well that we don't talk about what happens after we build a system, what happens after we make sure that the lights are on and that everything is watered and fed. And I think what I noticed in the last few years, and from my own personal experience, is that because we don't talk about it enough, is that there's this lingering thing in the industry where mental health is something that we seem to care about, but for some reason we don't talk about it enough. I've noticed, and I've had many conversations with people that are struggling. And I think the more we advance in understanding technology and understanding the impact and all that, the more we're going to see this sort of conversations being needed.
And do you think that there is something specific about the field of technology that contributes to that in some way, or is triggering that?
I think I'm going to quote you actually. I think that the uncertainty of what's happening and what's coming and how to react to the exponential changes that we're seeing is a contributing factor. I think that people are feeling unease given the fact that we're bombarded with this narrative of, will you have a job in the next 10 years? And that is not only not helping, of course, but also creating this convoluted uncertainty is not allowing people to just pause and think about what's actually going to happen. And that narrative is being driven by things and by need and by interest in agendas that are very far from caring for people's mental health.
And I also think that possibly with technology, it's really interesting how we basically work with zeros and ones on a hard drive somewhere in the cloud.
Yeah.
And we cannot see those zeros and ones. And I think it's really hard for us to really understand the complexity of it all because it's kind of abstracted away. And we often don't think about the second degree consequences of our decisions and the need to, as you said, maintainability and making sure things keep going. We often chase the next thing because that's what's expected from technology. And this just piles up levels of cognitive load, really. One level on top of another level on top of another level, and we are expected to do more. And I don't think that's sustainable, really. And I think that's what adds to our problems.
100%. More with the same amount of time. 24 hours in a day are the same 24 hours in a day. And you touch on something that I've been talking about as much as I can. I don't want to say that I came up with this because maybe somebody else did. But I talk a lot about what I call psychological sustainability in our industry. And I think that what that means, as I mentioned before, what happens once we build the system and all the adrenaline of that comes crashing down, actually, when you go, now I need to, in the cases of someone doing a specific project, then they have to hand it over to somebody else. And it feels that we're being rushed onto what the next thing is. And I think more important than building for things that are sustained in the future from a technology perspective, I think it should be sustained in the future from the people who are going to maintain it, from people who are going to redesign it, from people who are designing it today. And that psychological sustainability is something that I speak as much as I can and that I coach my teams to really think about the fact that when you are in the thick of it, it's really hard to understand the toll that is taken on you and sort of pausing for a second and going, I need to think about what's going to happen once this is over. I need to think about that the deadline is just a deadline. And if I am not okay, I won't be able to build something that is okay. I'll rush it through. I will hurt other people. I will, all of the things that I just don't want to break, I'll end up breaking them. And I think we don't talk about it enough. We talk about this. You asked me before off the record about how is it different from psychological safety. Well, that's something that we talk about a lot in DevOps and in a bunch of other manifestos that are out there. And I think psychological safety from the perspective of being able to voice your opinions, being able to point out something that is fundamentally wrong, being able to not have a blame culture within your teams and within your sprints or whatever it is. It's one element of that. And I see it as part of the initial part of a continuum when I talk about psychological safety. And that continuum is, let's not have all of those negative things. Let's allow our people to voice. Let's allow our people to feel safe and so on. But once that project finishes, or when that thing, whatever that is, finishes, what are the things that we are putting in place for those people to be able to go, oh, I'm very excited for the next job or the next project or the next thing, and not going, finally, this is over. I need to quit now. It's sort of like when you come back from holidays and you go, I need a holiday for my holiday, because everything was so rushed and so it's stressful, but not really. And I think that that's a key anchor when it comes to how we see mental health in our industry moving forward, I think.
Yeah, and this triggers some memories of my struggle in the past when, that was now a couple of years ago, when I was changing roles and taking more responsibility. And of course it was exciting, so I jumped into it, and with some fears, but also with a lot of confidence that that's going to be great. But quite quickly I realized that the role was more than I expected, and there was more expected of me. There were many areas that I didn't have idea about, and I had to learn quickly. I had to make decisions with a lot of unknowns, with a lot of uncertainty. People were relying on me. I was feeling I was failing them. I was failing myself, and the level of overwhelm and anxiety was really high. I think something that you said before, that when we are in the middle of it, we often don't see it, that is happening to us. And in my case, after a few months, I started realizing that I was not really showing up. That was not me in those decisions or in those meetings or when I was talking to my people, and I couldn't recognize myself. And that triggered my thinking, well, there's something wrong. I cannot keep going like this, because I am not helping the team. I'm not helping myself, and I had to do something about it. I had to do something to get better. When you're in the middle of it, it's so hard to see it.
And I think it's important to notice when you, and I'm sorry that you went through that, by the way. I feel for you. And I had a similar experience, and I can tell you about it. But what I think as well is that I try to frame it from positive and growth mindset, where it's, and this is not something I said, it is something that a dear friend of mine always says. If the new thing that you're doing doesn't scare you, it's because maybe you're moving into a too safe space, or more of the same. And I respect that, and I think it's awesome. It's an awesome way of seeing it. The other side of that same coin is stress and pressure come from trying to control the things that you cannot control, but still try to do so. And what happens is that when we step into certain roles, and that might be someone finishing uni, just starting on something new at a corporate or whatever it is. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't have to be an executive role. It doesn't have to be a head off role. It's just any role that is new to you feels huge. Tending that there's this messy thing that happens when we are learning on the role that I think we underestimate. And there's another author that talks about the learning space. We try to get to the I already know place at the very beginning when we're just stepping into something. And that messy place in the middle, it's the thick of it that I was talking about before. And it's just that messy place where the very first step for me and what works for me, and it may not work for everybody. What works for me is step back a little bit and go, it's okay to not know. It's okay to, I have no idea what I'm doing, and that's okay. Because hopefully no one is expecting me to know everything. And I'll get there. And understanding that there are steps that you need to take and that you will take and that you will at some point be successful if you have the purpose in front of you. It's a very, very important thing to keep in mind constantly. Because again, that pressure of trying to control something and not being able to and still trying comes from that messy place in the middle, I think.
Wow. Going back to your being vocal on LinkedIn and in the community, what reaction do you get from people when you talk about this?
I am surprised about the fact that a lot of people are positive about the fact that I talk about this and that they recognize that it's something that we need to address. What I've seen as well is that a lot of people message me separately and off the record with a messaging that is along the lines of, look, I am struggling, or I struggled in the past, or I'm not coping, or what do you do for coping mechanisms and so on. I've been struggling with this boss or with this company or with this project, but I just want to talk about it off the record. I don't want to talk about it openly because of reasons. And there's a myriad of reasons. Some people will go, this may damage my abilities to get another job. And the one that I hear a lot and I hate the most is people are going to think I'm weak. This is going to hurt my personal brand from a weakness or strength perspective. But when I say that we need to talk about it more and normalize these conversations, it has to do with healing the narrative of mental health struggle equals weakness. And that's a huge problem that we have. And it's evidenced by all of the messages that I got. And of course, in some cases, I've got people saying, look, I had this problem with this company and they were all a bunch of whatever, and I can't say it publicly. And I understand that there's obviously confidentiality and NDA reasons why you wouldn't. But I think the normalization of the conversation has to come from, I'm struggling. Independently of what the company is, independently of what I've done in the past or who my boss is, I struggle. Because I tell you what, a few years ago, and then stepping into my struggles, a few years ago in a company that I was, I really, really struggled with some changes that were happening, with projects that were being thrown at us with unrealistic expectations, unrealistic deadlines, that horrible feeling of someone is trying to manage you out, but it's actually not. It was just unrealistic expectations for whatever the reason. When I look back now, I do see that shaped me into who I am today, but you can only get to that point in hindsight, right?
Of course.
So what got me to this point, but at the same time, the same person that I was so unhappy with, who I was reporting to, is a friend today. And that shift in relationship had nothing to do with what happened then. It had to do with understanding that we are who we are in this present moment, grounding ourselves in, this is what I'm dealing with right now, also gives you the ability to go, this is just a job. I said to you, counterintuitively to what people probably want to hear, this is just a job. This is something that we do. This is not who we are necessarily. And it's not worth your life. It's not worth you not being here just because you think that deadline is more important than your family, is more important than your mana in general. So I think there's a huge thing that happens there that we don't talk about necessarily.
I wonder if we could give some practical tools or techniques or approaches, mindset to our listeners. Something that I try. Sometimes it's not easy and sometimes I forget about it.
Sure.
But something I try to use is the thinking exercise, how important this thing, whatever I worry about, or decision or project, how important is going to be in a day, in a week, in a year, 10 years time. And when you take that perspective of time, especially when you start going to year, 5, 10 years, you realize probably it's not that important.
Mindset is a beautiful thing, isn't
it? Exactly. It allows you to just take a step back and use that hindsight right now instead of waiting a year or 5 years for it to happen. So that's something I think can be really useful to understand how much do I really need to worry about it and stress about it. And there are things that I'm like, actually don't need to stress about this thing because that's actually, it's going to have some consequences for
Yeah,
me and other people. But more often than not, I realize it's not that important in the big scheme of things.
you bang on. Grounding yourself into this, in the need of understanding how impactful it is in the next 6, 12, 24 months. I think that's very important. Going back to techniques and things that work, I think there's a couple of things that I would like to mention, if that's okay with you.
Yes,
Number
please.
one is it's okay to not be okay. Give yourself the I've heard this many times. I obviously didn't come up with this, but talk to yourself as you were talking to a friend. When you have the inner monologue, and I know, believe you me, I know how hard it is to control that inner monologue, but try to have that inner monologue to be as kind as you would be to a friend or to a family member or to your partner, wife, husband. That's something that has helped me in the past. But when you are in the spiraling down, I think the single most important thing that I ever did was seek for help. And I know how hard it is, again, and I know how hard it is to feel like you're being defeated by something. That was my feeling, right? So I've been suffering from major depression syndrome and clinical depression for many years, as much as I can remember it. And I remember at some point, not many years ago, thinking it has defeated me. I'm just going to have to go to the next step and move from psychologist to psychiatrist or to GP or to maybe even think about getting committed or being committed. And I remember thinking this thing has defeated me. So seeking for help and trying to get someone who truly understands the works of the mind is a very important. Secondly, understanding that or trying to make peace with the fact that it's also a chemical imbalance or a chemical thing that happens in your brain. And because it is a chemical reaction, and there are studies that talk about this. I obviously did not come up with this. There are things, very simple things that we can do. Ground yourself in the fact that eating well, doing exercise, being around people are the things that are going to get you out of it. I always talk about the fact that depression for me felt for many years as like quicksand. And the more I struggled, the more I kept. And someone said to me, the more you try to find a person or a thing that is going to get you out of it, harder it's going to be. So for me, it was finding ways of pulling myself out, but pulling myself out. Making peace with the fact that I am pulling myself out. I need to want this. I need to be able to take the first step. And hey, don't get me wrong, the first step of 20,000 kilometer journey is the hardest one. The longest one is the first one. So understanding that was very important to me. And from then I started using the analogy of it was finding that branch that allowed me to pull myself out. And that branch was grounded not on a single thing, but on a massive tree of things that I had to almost comply with. Going out there, being more social, talking to people, finding once a day, and this is something that I do and I would encourage people to do so as well, find the thing that makes you happy. That is, it might be work, but most of the time, let's just face it, does not work. Find the things that drives you, that makes you really happy, that gets you in that element, and do it at least once a day. So for me, it's music. I'm not a musician. I'm going to say that I'm a musician, but real musicians are going to
I'm
get really
sure
angry.
you are. I'm sure you
I'm
are.
I'm a musician, and what I do is at least once a day, I do something related to that. And that might be something as simple as I'm going to browse the internet for that guitar that I will never buy. all that equipment that I will never use. That gets me out of anything and everything else. From the physical activity perspective, I play football. So being out there a couple of times a week playing football is something, and I can, once I grounded myself into understanding that, I can see the difference. I walk into the football field with a mindset, and some very hard days I go in with a frustration that might not be about work, whatever it is. But when it finishes, I can feel my body changing. I can feel my mind, the endorphins and the dopamine that hits when you go, actually, that's not as important as I thought it was. That's just, without going into a, screw that. But it's more of a, actually, I feel a lot better about this. Maybe I can just sleep on it. And asking yourself the question of, this thing that I'm feeling, is it a feeling or is it a fact? Am I feeling this way because of something that is my own narrative and is my own paradigm of the world? Or is it a fact? Is it a fact that that thing is going to break? Is it a fact that my partner doesn't love me? Is it a fact that whatever? Or am I just feeling this way for whatever reason? Would I be feeling this the same way if I had slept enough, if I had drank enough water, if I've been out doing exercise? All of those things, and it's a law. I get it, it's a law. But those are the things that I think relatively easily people could start doing and start feeling much better, I think.
I find the last part especially important because our brains are pattern recognition machines. And we love to, if we don't understand something, we love to fill in the gaps with our patterns from the past.
Bang on.
So if there's something happening, then we don't understand it. We're going to use our biases, our previous experiences to fill in the gaps. And as you said, the question is this actually a fact? And yes, if I had this interaction with a person and 9 out of 10 times they reacted this way, that's probably a fact. They may not be a great person and maybe that's fine. But quite often it's not the case. We just cast our expectations or even we project our fears on other people or situations. And these are often not facts. And if you try to seek the truth about reality, you can often realize that actually maybe it's not what it is, and how you can bring the curiosity into this and realize maybe it's not the case. And it can free you up to have different way of approaching things.
Absolutely. And that's such a powerful thing that you just touched on, because, and I'm going to break my own confidentiality here about my own personal life. I don't think I've ever told this story as vocal as I am. There is a person back in Argentina that was super, 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 super close. I think family level. When I got here, I started doing retrospection around our relationship and how for many years I felt I was not treated properly. Let's just put it that way. Doesn't really matter on the details. And I got really angry and frustrated with that person. And I kept asking myself, why throughout the years didn't I say anything about these things and so on? And then at a therapy session, I had a breakthrough, and the therapist said to me, do you think maybe is your brain telling you these stories that you believe in because it is a lot easier for you to think that this person was being unfair to you throughout these years? It's a lot easier to think about that than missing them while you're 13,000 kilometers away. That broke me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that is such a powerful thing to think, because that pattern recognition that you talk about maybe was 2 conversations, 3, 5, 9 conversations throughout 30 years that I had with this person. And I had to go back to a lot of, is this actually a fact? Or this is how I'm feeling. And if I'm feeling this way, I'm going to put a name to it. And the name is, I don't know. And by recognizing that, I got to explore on what that feeling was. So you cannot be more right in terms of how powerful that filling the gaps that our brain does is.
Oh, wow. And this has been, for me, very powerful conversation, Diego.
Thank you. For me
Thank you
too.
for sharing all of that. Is there maybe one or couple of messages you think that you want to leave the audience with?
Thank you for having me. It's been a huge pleasure, and I wish we could do this more often. It's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel defeated. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. And I'll go back to, this is just a job. That is just a conversation. That was just an email. That was just a phone call. People still love you. People still want you here. The world would be devastated if you were not here. Please think 3 times and pick up the phone and call anybody before feeling like this is the end. The most powerful thing that happened to me in hindsight, or one of the, was sitting down across a table with someone and saying, if I decide to end my life, there's nothing you could have done. Understanding that taking that step on having those conversations is the first thing that needs to happen. So it's okay is the message that I want to get across. It's okay. You'll be okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it so much, and I had a lot of food for thought. I'm sure that's going to be the same for the audience. Thank you, Diego, for taking the time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This was Diego Nievas, a leader whose courage to speak openly about mental health offers a powerful reminder. It's okay not to be okay. If you found this episode meaningful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're struggling yourself, please remember you're not alone. Reach out and talk to someone. Thanks for listening to Tech Waka, and as always, stay kind, stay curious, and stay connected.